Kimberly here from BeautifulLife365.com, and I have a tutorial for you today with 3 easy ways to make backgrounds for your art journals or your bullet journals. I hope that you will enjoy this, and remember you can subscribe and click the bell for notifications so you know exactly when I upload new videos with tips, flips, and tutorials. Let's go to my desk now. Hello, hello, creative friend. Today I'm going to show you 3 easy background techniques to use in your art journal or your bullet journal. I'll put this journal away because it's finished, and I'm going to bring out my new art journal. And as I open it up here, you can see a few pages where I have already begun some backgrounds. And I'll just turn over here to a fresh page. Today I'm going to be using 4 colors, this kind of pea green, a teal, a mint, and some gold, which is one of my favorites. When you're using colors, you want to be aware of the color wheel and make sure that you do not combine colors that are opposites on the color wheel, such as yellow and purple, red and green, orange and blue. When you mix those colors, you will get a more neutral or muddy color, and so you want to stay in the warm range or in the cool range. Gold is actually a warm color, but you'll see it is kind of a neutral in this spread. So I'm going to start by adding some mint. I usually like to start with adding the lighter colors at the top of the page. And then I have some teal. I'm just randomly dropping dabs of paint on the page, and this is acrylic paint. I'm adding some green. I got a little bit too much, and so you will see me take my card, which is just an old key card, and try to put some paint back in the tube, which I was semi-successful at. But you can see that's just a key card. You could use an old credit card for this technique. So I'm going to finish up by adding some gold to the page. Quite a bit of gold also. Then I take the card and just scrape that paint down the page, and as you're scraping it, the paint combines to make some really delicious colors. So you'll see I'll go back to the top and just continue to scrape it down, and there will be excess paint on your card, so then you can use that on the second page. I usually like to make a 2-page spread in my art journal. So on this spread I had a little bit of white space after all the paint was off the card, so I went back and added a little more of the teal. I like the way the dark colors and the light colors contrast on the page. Contrast? Which one is correct? I don't know. Anyway, the contrast of the dark against the light. I love to do that on my art journaling pages. Another technique you can use while the paint is still wet is to take a stencil and a baby wipe and remove some of the paint, and that just adds a little bit of texture. And I usually do that in 3 to 5 spots on the page, but I'm just showing you the technique here. So there's our first technique with the paint scraping, and now for the second technique we're going to use sketch paper or multimedia paper, mixed media paper, and you can use these techniques in your journal, but I also like to use them on individual pieces of paper, and then I can reuse that as collage paper. There is also, we're going to use wax paper and a brayer. If you don't have a brayer, you can use a tin can or a rolling pin, but I'll link to a brayer that you can purchase. So I'm going to lay the wax paper down and start adding some little dollops of paint, and I'm using warmer colors for this spread with a fluorescent pink and a bright yellow, and then I have kind of a mauvey purple. So just add the dollops of paint randomly on the wax paper. Then you're going to take the wax paper and flip it over onto your art journal or your paper, mixed media paper. Then take the brayer or your rolling pin or can and just spread the paint out between the wax paper and the mixed media paper. Depending on how much paint you have, you may have some left over, and then you can reuse that paint in another location. I just flipped the wax paper and continued to spread it. And then I ended up adding more paint because I wanted a more full background. So I'm adding more of that darker color. And some more fluorescent pink, because who doesn't love pink? And a little more yellow. And then I'm just going to repeat that process, place the wax paper over some of the white spots on the page, and use the brayer to spread the paint. And again, the colors will combine to make some lovely new colors. I just love the way the hot pink and yellow look together. I now have some orange on the page. So I'm just continuing with that technique, and you can just continue until you like the way your page looks. So there is your second technique. Now for the third technique, I'm going to use a gel plate. These are a little bit expensive, but they're great for making monoprints. And they say to keep it stored in the package, so I'm just peeling that plastic off. And as you can see, it's important to clean because I actually stained mine last time I used it. So for this spread, I'm going to add some red paint, a purple, and again, that's a lot of dark purple, but I didn't bother trying to remove any of it. And I'm going to use silver. I love those metallics. So you add the paint to the gel plate, then use the brayer to spread it out to make sure you have good coverage. And I use the brayer in both directions. And then take the gel plate and flip it over onto your page. And I decided at the last minute to add a stencil, and you can just press the stencil right on the paint and then flip it over and press the paint through the stencil onto your paper or your journal page. And you'll see when I lift it, the paint came through the stencil and around the edges of it, and then I just take the stencil and the excess paint on that and press it onto the bottom. So I'm just adding different layers of texture to the page. Then I still have paint on the gel plate, so I'm going to flip that over and make another print. Removing some paint from my hand there. And then there's still additional paint, so I just flip it in a different direction to make a bit of a different pattern. Press it down to make another print. And you can just continue to do this and layer up your page until you like what you have. I am actually going to add more paint, so I'm going to use that fluorescent pink and some additional red paint. Oh yeah, actually when I looked at the brayer, there was still paint on it, and so I'm just going to put that excess paint onto the page directly with the brayer, and then I clean the brayer off and I'll add some red paint here to the gel plate. Again, the contrast of the light and dark I just love. So using the red with pink and that, lighter pink with that dark purple, just love the way that looks. So again, I'm going to spread the paint out with the brayer and flip it over onto the page to make my prints. And notice I turn the page to get a pattern going a different direction from the previous prints. And then I will print that one more time Make sure I use all the paint. I hate wasting paint. So if I have excess paint on the gel plate, I will put it on an additional sheet of mixed media paper if I don't want to print again on my journal page. So here you have our 3 techniques: gel plate, wax paper, and the credit card scraping technique, and then the little baby wipe technique to remove the paint.